A young man stands beside a black SUV in a police station parking lot, and he will not open the trunk. His girlfriend of 3 years has been missing for 2 days. He has an answer for everything: where she went, when she left, who she was with, except for one question. What's in the back of that car? By the time this moment happens, detectives already know his story doesn't add up. What they don't know yet is how far he's willing to go to keep them from finding out. In the East Bay town of Oakley, California, a family spent 3 years believing their daughter's relationship was simply complicated, not dangerous. Alexis Gabe and Marshall Jones had been together on and off since she was barely into her 20s, a bond that outsiders described as loving in public and tense behind closed doors. Nobody outside that relationship saw the full picture. Friends noticed the small warning signs, a controlling text here, a jealous comment there, but none of it seemed enough to raise real alarm. On January 26, 2022, Alexis made a private decision that would put those warning signs to the test. That Wednesday looked like any other. Alexis ran errands, checked in with friends, and carried on with the small, unremarkable rhythm of a normal week. By early evening, she'd made plans to stop by Marshall's house in Antioch, a house that wasn't even his, but his stepfather's, where Marshall lived with his mother, Alicia Coleman Clark. To anyone watching, it looked like just another visit in a 3-year relationship. What made this evening different was the reason behind it. According to people close to Alexis, she wasn't going there to reconcile. She was going there to end things, permanently. What happened between the two of them that night has never been told in a courtroom, because no trial ever took place. What's known comes from Marshall's own account to police, an account investigators would later find riddled with holes. He said they spent a few hours together, watched television, played video games, nothing out of the ordinary. He said she left around 9 that evening, and that he personally opened the garage door and watched her drive off. It was a calm, detailed story. And calm, detailed stories, when someone later turns up dead, tend to draw the most scrutiny. By the next morning, the silence had become impossible to ignore. Alexis's phone rang straight to voicemail. Her social media stayed untouched. For a woman who spoke to her mother almost daily, a single night without a word already felt wrong, and every hour that followed made it worse. Her sister was the one who finally called it in, her voice urgent enough that responding officers understood immediately this wasn't a case of someone needing space. Within hours, deputies were at the family's door, gathering details, timelines, and names. One name in particular rising above all the rest: Marshall. It was the first name Alexis's mother gave police, and the most important one. She told officers her daughter had gone to see him the night before and never returned. Then came a detail that changed the entire tone of the investigation. A friend of Alexis's had come forward with something Alexis had confided months earlier. Marshall had allegedly told her that if she ever tried to leave him, he wouldn't let her go quietly. It was the kind of statement that, in hindsight, families spend the rest of their lives replaying. In this case, it moved the investigation immediately. Officers arrived at the Antioch house that same day, expecting information. What they got instead was a performance. Marshall was talkative, cooperative on the surface, handing over his phone and his call log without hesitation. But his tone struck the interviewing officer as strange. Casual, even faintly amused, for a man whose girlfriend of 3 years had vanished without explanation. He offered up a theory of his own. Alexis had probably gone to unwind with a friend afterward, someone she often confided in. It sounded reasonable. It also happened to be the one detail that data would soon prove false. The next break didn't come from Marshall, and it didn't come from a detective's notepad. It came from Alexis's own relatives, canvassing neighborhoods and posting her photo across social media in a desperate search of their own. They found her car abandoned on a quiet residential street in Oakley, nowhere near her home, doors unlocked, keys still in the ignition, personal belongings missing. When investigators pulled data from the vehicle's onboard system, the timeline told a different story than the one Marshall had given. Her car had been at his house minutes before it was left there, not anywhere else. The following day, detectives asked Marshall to come to the station and hand over his phone for a forensic download. He agreed and followed them in his stepfather's Ford Explorer, a detail that would matter more than anyone realized yet. Officers driving behind him noticed the car drifting slightly, as though something in the back seat or trunk was blocking his sightline. At the station, his composure from the first interview was gone. When asked to open the trunk, he stalled, offered to describe the contents instead, and only opened it after repeated requests. Inside were blankets, pillows, and food waste. For over a month afterward, the investigation went quiet. A failed data download had erased whatever the phone might have shown. The break that finally moved the case forward came from a security camera 2 days after Alexis disappeared, footage that wouldn't surface publicly until years later. It showed Marshall backing his stepfather's Ford Explorer into his mother's driveway and unloading several heavy garbage bags. Then, hours later, during a party at that same house, loading those same bags back into the vehicle and driving off. On May 26, 2022, prosecutors filed a first-degree murder charge against him. By the time that charge was filed, Marshall Jones was already in Washington state. On June 1, 2022, a task force located him at an apartment complex in Kent. According to law enforcement, he charged at officers with a knife, and they opened fire, killing him at the scene. There would be no trial, no confession, no answer given in his own words. 5 months later, remains found in a garbage bag near Plymouth, California, were confirmed to be Alexis's, though to this day, only a portion of them have ever been recovered. Her family is still waiting for the rest.